There comes a moment in life when everything goes quiet inside of you, and a single question rises like a whisper you can't ignore. Is this really all there is? It doesn't come with thunder or lightning. It arrives softly, in between the ordinary moments. Perhaps while washing dishes, perhaps in the silence after everyone else has gone to sleep. And yet, once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Something in you knows that the path you've been walking is only a fraction of the truth. That whisper is not the voice of discontent. It is the voice of awakening. Spiritual awakening is not a sudden lightning strike, reserved for saints and mystics. It is more like a symphony unfolding, one movement after another, each carrying you deeper into the mystery of your own being. Every chapter of this journey opens a new door, and through that door you come closer to your true essence. For most of us, life begins on rails. We follow the blueprint that society hands us: education, career, family, success, retirement. From the outside, it looks complete. You might even be praised for having done everything right. And yet inside, there's a hollowness, like wearing a costume that no longer fits. You go through the motions, smiling when you're expected to smile. But some part of you wonders if you're only playing a role in someone else's script. That moment of questioning is not failure. It is divine disruption. It is the universe tapping you on the shoulder, saying, "Wake up, there is more." And if you've ever felt that unsettling tug, know this: you're not broken. You're not lost. You're being invited into the greatest journey of all, the journey of becoming who you truly are. Think of it like a river. For years it may have flowed steadily in one direction, carving its way through familiar valleys. But suddenly, the current begins to shift. Rocks appear where once there was calm water. You can fight it. Try to paddle harder against the current. Or you can surrender and trust that the river is carrying you somewhere new. Awakening begins when we stop struggling against the current of life, and instead, allow ourselves to be carried by the intelligence that has always been guiding us. And this is important. Awakening is not about abandoning the world, renouncing your family, or escaping responsibility. It is about discovering a deeper rhythm beneath the noise. It is about learning that peace is not found in what you acquire, but in the awareness of what you already are. When the whisper of awakening first enters your life, it can feel confusing. You may sense that something is shifting, but you can't put words to it. Old pleasures lose their flavor. Conversations that once excited you now feel empty. You may even feel like a stranger in your own life, as though you've stepped out of alignment with the world around you. And in a way, you have. Your consciousness has started vibrating at a frequency that no longer matches the old story. This is not a mistake. It is the beginning of remembering. The mind will try to solve it with logic. It will say, maybe I just need a vacation. Maybe I need a new hobby. Maybe if I work harder or buy something new, this feeling will go away. But no purchase, no distraction, no quick fix can quiet the whisper of the soul. Because the whisper is not asking for more, it's asking for truth. Awakening is not about doing more. It's about allowing more. It's not about building a new identity. It's about loosening the grip of the old one. And the only thing required of you is presence. The willingness to stop, breathe, and listen to what is moving underneath the surface of your life. Even a few minutes of stillness each day can open that door. Sit with the question, instead of rushing to answer it. Write it down if you must. Let it linger. Who am I? Really? What is this life asking of me? These are not questions to solve with the mind. They are invitations for the heart to remember. And here's the paradox. The disruption feels uncomfortable because it dismantles the false sense of certainty we once held. But that discomfort is not the end. It is the beginning. It is your soul knocking on the walls of the prison you built around it, saying, "There is more. Step out into the open. Some people spend their entire lives trying to silence that voice. They drown it in work, in noise, in endless activity. They tell themselves they'll pay attention later. After retirement, after the kids are grown, after they have more time. But the whisper does not wait. It will return again and again, until you either numb yourself to it completely, or you allow it to lead you forward. And when you choose to listen, when you choose presence over distraction, something extraordinary happens. The world doesn't change instantly, but your perception does. Coincidences begin to appear. The right book finds you at the right time. A stranger says the exact words you needed to hear. Patterns that once felt random now reveal a hidden order. These are not accidents. They are signals from the field of consciousness, guiding you toward the next chapter of your unfolding. This, my friend, is the entryway into awakening, not a mountaintop experience, not a dramatic miracle, but a gentle shift in frequency. And once it begins, you cannot go back. You may resist it, you may question it, but deep down you know life as you once knew it will never be enough again. Because you are not here just to survive. You are here to awaken. So if you've ever felt that quiet ache, that subtle dissatisfaction, that haunting question of, is this really all there is? Then know that you are not alone. You are standing at the threshold of a doorway that countless souls have walked through before you. And beyond that doorway lies a greater life, not one dictated by fear or by roles, but by the rhythm of your own true being. Pause for a moment now. Feel your breath. Let the noise settle, and listen again for that whisper. It is not asking you to chase, to force, to prove. It is only asking you to remember who you truly are, and to let life carry you, like a river finally flowing in its natural direction. 1. Necessary Dissolution. There comes a chapter in this journey when everything you thought was holding you together begins to fall apart. At first, it feels terrifying, almost unbearable. The beliefs you once clung to no longer make sense. The roles you played lose their meaning. Even the spiritual identity you carefully built, all the books you read, the practices you collected, the progress you thought you were making, suddenly collapses like a sandcastle meeting the tide. It feels like loss. It feels like failure, but it is neither. What is really happening is a purification. A deeper intelligence is at work, dissolving everything false, so that only the truth can remain. Think of the caterpillar. For a time, it crawls along leaves, doing exactly what it knows how to do. But when the time comes for transformation, it enters the cocoon. And in that cocoon, it does not simply grow wings overnight. It dissolves. It melts down into a formless soup. Everything that once defined it disappears. If we looked inside, we might think, this is the end. Nothing could come from this. Yet it is in that very dissolution that the blueprint for the butterfly awakens. That is what happens in the necessary dissolution of the soul. You may find that the meditation practices that once brought you peace now feel empty. The teachers you admired no longer speak to you. The words that once gave you comfort fall flat, as if they belong to a language you can't quite understand anymore. Even the feeling of spiritual progress evaporates. Instead, you are left with silence, emptiness, confusion. I know how dark that silence can feel. It's like standing in the ruins of your own house, with no idea how to rebuild. Nights feel longer, days feel heavier. You might even question your sanity, wondering if you've somehow taken a wrong turn. But I want you to hear this: nothing has gone wrong. This is not the end of your path. This is the path when everything crumbles. What is being destroyed is not your essence. It is the false scaffolding that once propped up your sense of self. It is the mask that you believed was your face. And though the collapse feels merciless, it is in fact merciful, because without it, you would remain forever imprisoned in a house that was never yours. I remember my own time in that cocoon. There were days when the grief felt endless, and nights when I prayed for something, anything, to make it stop. But no relief came, because the lesson of dissolution is not escape, it is surrender. The only way out is through, and once I stopped fighting, once I let myself feel the unraveling without trying to fix it, something shifted. I discovered that in the emptiness, there was still a presence, a quiet, steady awareness that had never left me. That awareness was who I truly was, and it did not need to be rebuilt. This is why dissolution, though painful, is sacred. It strips away everything you thought you needed, until only the essential remains. And when you stand in that emptiness, naked of roles, naked of certainty, you find that you are not nothing. You are the space in which everything arises. You are the witness, the presence, the awareness itself. It takes courage to endure this stage. Many people try to bypass it. They rush to find a new teacher, a new philosophy, a new distraction to patch over the cracks. But if you bypass the cocoon, you rob yourself of the butterfly. Dissolution is not punishment. It is grace disguised as loss. I know these words may not make the pain vanish, but perhaps they can help you see your pain differently. What if this collapse is not a sign that you've failed, but a sign that you're finally ready to be free? What if the emptiness is not an absence, but a spaciousness, a wide open field where new life can grow? Imagine an old forest after a fire. At first, all you see are ashes. But in those ashes, the soil is richer than ever before. Within weeks, tender green shoots begin to appear. Within months, the forest regenerates with a vitality that could not have existed without the fire. Your soul is no different. Dissolution is the fire that clears away the underbrush of illusion, so that truth can take root. In the quantum field, scientists call this a phase transition. Like water becoming steam, one form has to completely lose its structure before it can embody the next. The same principle is at work in consciousness. You cannot carry the old self into the new life. It must dissolve. So if you find yourself here, in the thick of dissolution, I ask you not to despair. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are becoming. The grief, the confusion, the emptiness, they are all part of the alchemy. Treat yourself with tenderness, as you would a dear friend walking through the fire. Allow yourself to rest, to weep, to be still. This is not weakness. This is the womb of transformation. And slowly, when the time is right, dawn begins to break, not in a sudden burst, but in a gentle light that seeps through the cracks, a clarity that does not come from thinking, but from being. You realize you don't need to rebuild the old house. A new home is being born in you, one built not on illusion, but on truth. That is the gift of necessary dissolution. It feels like death, but it is the birth of authenticity. It feels like emptiness, but it is the space where love and wisdom take root. And when you emerge from it, you are no longer who you were. You are more real, more free, more alive than you ever imagined. So if this is where you are right now, if everything feels like it's falling apart, hold on to this simple truth. You are not ending. You are unfolding. Just as the caterpillar dissolves so the butterfly can rise, so too are you being reshaped for the life that awaits you. 2. Sacred seeking. There is a season in the journey of awakening when the heart becomes thirsty. It is not a thirst for water, but for meaning. You begin to search, almost compulsively, as though your very life depends on it. Books pile up on your nightstand, each one promising to hold the missing key. You sign up for workshops, retreats, courses. You explore ancient rituals, then turn to modern science, trying to stitch together a map of what this existence really means. It can feel exhilarating, like standing at the door of a vast library, shelves stretching beyond sight, and suddenly being given permission to open every book. You taste a little here, a little there. Meditation on Monday, yoga on Tuesday, a lecture on quantum physics by Thursday, and perhaps a silent retreat by the weekend. Your days become filled with practices and teachings, each one like a gem you hope will finally unlock the secret of who you are. I know this stage well. There was a time when my internet history looked like a treasure hunt of consciousness. I would stay up late, scrolling through talks, devouring wisdom from teachers across the globe. My bookshelf groaned under the weight of titles, each one highlighting a different path: Buddhism, mysticism, neuroscience, energy healing, philosophy. It felt like drinking from a fire hose, thrilling, overwhelming, and impossible to slow down. And yet, after the initial excitement, something else set in: confusion, because every teacher said something different. One voice told me that enlightenment required discipline and renunciation. Another told me it was about radical self-love. One book told me to breathe deeply into the body, another to transcend it entirely. One voice said, "Go within." Another said, "Serve the world." All of it sounded true in the moment. But when I tried to weave it together, it unraveled into contradictions. This is the shadow of the sacred seeking. The more you collect, the more scattered you can become. It is like trying to dig a well by scratching at 100 different places in the ground, never staying long enough in one spot to reach water. The heart longs for depth, but the mind keeps chasing novelty. And yet, please understand, this too is sacred. The seeking is not a mistake. It is a stretching of your inner muscles, an expansion of your capacity to hold different perspectives. It is like trying on different clothes until you find what truly fits. Each path you explore, each practice you experiment with, is giving you a glimpse of your own vastness. Even the confusion is teaching you discernment, teaching you to listen for resonance, rather than rushing after every shiny promise. But the greatest trap here is mistaking consumption for transformation. You can attend a dozen retreats, buy every crystal, memorize every teaching, and still remain on the surface. Because true transformation doesn't come from how much you've collected, but from how deeply you've allowed even one truth to sink into your being. I remember the turning point. I had been jumping from practice to practice, chasing every new method. And one day, in the middle of all that frenzy, I felt exhausted, not just physically, but spiritually. It was as if my soul was whispering, "Stop running, choose." That was when I realized the seeking itself had become another distraction. It was keeping me busy, but not bringing me home. And so I chose, not forever, not as a vow, but as an experiment. I chose a handful of practices, just 2 or 3, that resonated most deeply. And I committed to them for a season. At first it felt limiting, almost boring, but slowly, something shifted. Depth replaced novelty. The practices became rivers instead of puddles, carrying me into places that books could not take me. This is the medicine of the sacred seeking focus. Not because other paths are wrong, but because depth is what dissolves confusion. The paradox is that you don't find the ultimate key by collecting every lock. You find it by allowing one key to open you, again and again, until you discover that the door was never locked to begin with. And if you are in this stage now, if your heart is racing to consume every teaching you can find, I want to say this: bless your hunger. It is proof that something deep within you has awakened. You are no longer content with the surface. You are longing for the source. That longing is holy. But also remember, the source cannot be found in books alone. It cannot be bought, or packaged, or collected like trophies. It can only be lived. The practices you choose are not ends in themselves. They are vehicles. What matters is not how many you ride, but how present you are on the journey. Think of a gardener. You could scatter 1,000 seeds across rocky soil and watch most of them wither, or you could plant just a few in fertile ground and tend them daily. The second way brings life, growth, fruit. The sacred seeking invites you to stop scattering and start tending, and something beautiful happens when you do. The noise begins to quiet. The confusion softens. You no longer need to prove yourself by how much you know, or impress others with your spiritual vocabulary. Instead, wisdom becomes embodied. You don't just talk about love. You live it in the way you speak, the way you listen, the way you hold space for another human being. At this stage, humility is your greatest ally, because the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. Each practice, each teaching, each glimpse into the mystery reveals a depth you cannot exhaust. The ego wants to say, "I've got it, I've arrived," but the heart knows you are only beginning. Sacred seeking is not the final destination. It is the training ground, the preparation, the widening of your vision. It is the season where you gather tools, but it is also the moment you must decide which tools you will actually use to build. And when you finally allow yourself to go deep, to stop running, to breathe, to rest in one place, you discover something extraordinary. The thing you were seeking has been quietly waiting inside you all along. So if you are here, in this holy restlessness, celebrate it. Do not rush to end it, but also do not mistake the search for the truth itself. Taste, explore, wander, but then, for the sake of your own soul, choose. Go deep. Let the seeking be not an endless chase, but the bridge that leads you home. 3. Embodied expression. There comes a time on the path when spirituality no longer feels like something you do. It stops being a practice you set aside for certain hours of the day, or a discipline that requires constant reminding. Instead, it begins to breathe through you, as naturally as your own heartbeat. This is what I call embodied expression. At this stage, you are not performing awakening. You are awakening. It lives in your eyes, in the way you pause before speaking, in the way you listen to another human being, with your whole presence. Even your silence carries a certain weight, not heavy, but steady, like a mountain rooted deeply in the earth. I remember the first time I noticed this shift in myself. I was having coffee with a friend, and they were pouring out their heart, full of confusion and pain. In the past, I would have scrambled to offer advice, to share a teaching, to give them something I had read or heard that might fix their struggle. But on that day, I didn't reach for anything. I just sat there, fully present, not trying to change them, not trying to sound wise. And as I listened, I felt a deep stillness move through me. My friend later told me, "I don't know why, but I feel lighter." Calmer. Just being around you. That's when I realized awakening had stopped being an idea in my head. It had become the atmosphere of my being. Embodied expression is when spirituality has seeped so deeply into your bones that it no longer needs to be announced. You don't need to tell anyone you are awake, or enlightened, or on a spiritual path. You don't need to prove it. In fact, you forget about the label entirely. You are simply living as yourself, and that self has been cleansed of so much illusion that it radiates truth without effort. It's a bit like a musician who has practiced for decades. At first, they had to memorize every note, every scale, drilling technique after technique. But eventually, the music flows from them without thought. Their body knows it. Their fingers find the keys. Their voice finds the pitch. Their soul pours into the song. They are no longer trying to play music. They are the music. Awakening, when embodied, feels the same way. And here is something important. This embodiment is not about perfection. You still feel human emotions. You still get tired. irritated, even sad. But the difference is that you no longer get lost in them. Emotions arise, like weather passing across the sky. But the sky itself, your awareness, remain clear. You no longer cling to every passing cloud. You let it come. You let it go. And because of that, life begins to move through you with a kind of grace. This stage also dissolves the need to save the world. When we are early on the path, we often feel an urgency to wake others up, to spread teachings, to change people. But when you reach embodied expression, you see clearly. You don't need to rescue anyone. People are not projects to be fixed. They are souls on their own perfect timing. And the best gift you can offer is your own authenticity. Your presence, grounded and true, becomes a mirror. Without words, you remind others of their own essence. I often think of it like a candle in a dark room. The candle doesn't shout at the darkness, doesn't lecture it, doesn't chase it away. It simply burns, quietly, and the darkness recedes on its own. In the same way, embodied presence doesn't demand attention. It simply shines, and those ready for its light will find comfort in it. This stage also brings a profound simplicity. You stop needing grand experiences to feel spiritual, washing the dishes, walking the dog, greeting a stranger on the street. These ordinary acts become saturated with sacredness. Every moment is an opportunity to live as awareness, to move with kindness, to embody love. You no longer separate your spiritual life from your ordinary life. They are the same life, seen through different eyes. And yes, there is a responsibility here too, not in the heavy sense of obligation, but in the light sense of knowing that your state of being ripples outward. When you carry peace, others feel it. When you maintain clarity, you bring clarity to the spaces you enter. It's not about control. It's about resonance. You understand that the quality of your inner state is not private. It affects the whole field of consciousness. So you choose, not out of pressure, but out of love, to maintain the highest frequency you can. If you are arriving at this stage, you might notice that people are drawn to you without even knowing why. They may not understand your journey. They may not share your language, but they feel something in your presence. A calm, a warmth, a quiete invitation. You become what some mystics call a living prayer, a reminder of what is possible. But here's the humility of it when you are truly embodying awakening. You don't think of yourself as awakened. You don't carry pride in it. If anything, you feel softer, more ordinary than ever. And yet in that ordinariness, there is beauty, because the sacred has finally woven itself into every corner of your humanity. So, embodied expression is not the end of the journey. It is the flowering of it. It is the place where all the searching, all the dissolving, all the restless longing finally settles into a steady flame. And the world doesn't need you to preach about it. The world needs you to live it, because your life, lived authentically, is already medicine. 4. The moment of complete presence. There is a point in the journey when you stop measuring your awakening by how much progress you've made, or by how close you think you are to some imagined finish line. Instead, you come face to face with something far simpler, yet infinitely more profound presence. Pure, unfiltered presence. In this place, awakening is no longer about striving. It's not about checking off practices or chasing milestones. It is about breathing fully into this moment and realizing that this moment is enough, not because it is spectacular, not because it is free from pain, but because it is alive. And in that aliveness, you discover the treasure you were searching for all along. I remember sitting on my porch one late afternoon, watching the light soften as the sun began to fall. For years, I had sought awakening through countless teachings, through discipline, through endless striving. But on that day, something inside me grew quiet. I wasn't trying to meditate. I wasn't repeating affirmations. I wasn't analyzing my growth. I was simply there. The sound of the wind in the trees, the warmth of the cup in my hands, the rhythm of my own breath. And in that ordinariness, I felt something extraordinary, a completeness I had never known. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't a peak experience. It was the simple truth that nothing was missing. That is the essence of complete presence. When you enter this space, time loosens its grip. The mind, which usually races ahead into tomorrow or drags you back into yesterday, begins to rest. The constant measuring, am I better than before? Am I close to awakening yet? Fades into silence. You are no longer a project to be fixed or improved. You are a living presence, whole in this very breath. And let me tell you, it is not resignation. It is not apathy. Presence is not about giving up on life, but about entering it fully. When you walk down the street, you notice the colors, the textures, the life humming beneath the surface of things. When you listen to someone, you are not rehearsing your reply or judging their story. You are with them, heart to heart. Even your own pain, when met in presence, begins to soften. You realize you don't need to resist it, don't need to label it, don't need to push it away. You can breathe with it. And in that breathing, the pain transforms into something less sharp, something more bearable. Presence is the soil from which every other stage of awakening grows. Without it, all the practices and all the teachings become just more noise. With it, even the simplest act becomes sacred. Washing dishes becomes a meditation. Walking the dog becomes communion with life. Silence becomes a symphony. And yet, this stage is subtle and often overlooked because the mind loves drama. It wants fireworks and grand revelations. But presence is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't impress anyone. It is as humble as sitting in your living room and suddenly realizing you are breathing. The challenge here is that presence cannot be forced. You cannot command yourself into it like an order. You can only allow it. You can only create space for it. By letting go of the chase. By loosening your grip on control. By remembering that you are not the thoughts swirling in your head. You are the awareness in which they arise. I often liken it to watching a child at play. Have you ever noticed how children can be completely absorbed in the moment? They don't sit there worrying about whether their game will impress anyone, or whether they've improved since yesterday. They simply play. Every pebble, every leaf, every moment is alive with wonder. That is presence, untainted. As adults, we lose that innocence under layers of ambition, anxiety, and regret. But the truth is, the capacity never leaves us. Presence waits patiently for us to return. And when you do return, even for a few moments, you taste a freedom that striving could never deliver. You realize that life is not something to reach someday. It is here, pulsing in your breath, vibrating in your chest, shimmering in the space between you and the next person you meet. This stage, the moment of complete presence, is both the simplest and the most radical, because if you truly embrace it, it changes everything. Relationships shift. You no longer need to control people, because you are with them, not against them. Work shifts. You no longer rush just to finish, but give yourself to the task, fully. Even your sense of self shifts. You stop chasing identities, because you feel the richness of simply being. And the beauty of this presence is that it is endlessly available. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to wait until your life is perfect. You can step into it right now. In this moment, even as you sit here listening, notice your breath. Notice the weight of your body, the space around you. In this noticing, you are already present. Complete presence does not mean you will never struggle again. Life will still bring its storms. But now, you meet the storms differently. Instead of being swept away, you are the still point around which the winds blow. You anchor yourself in the now, and from that anchor, you can face whatever comes with steadiness. So, if you are tired of measuring your worth by how much progress you've made, if you are weary from chasing the next big spiritual breakthrough, consider this. Perhaps the doorway you've been running toward is not ahead of you, but beneath your feet. This breath, this heartbeat, this moment, here, now, is the fullness you have been seeking. And when you let yourself enter it, not as an idea, but as a lived reality, you discover that presence itself is the teacher, the practice, the awakening. Everything else is built upon this foundation. Presence is not a destination. It is the ground beneath every step of the journey. And when you taste it fully, when you understand why the mystics and sages have always said, the kingdom of heaven is not far away, it is here, in the quiet miracle of this very moment. 5. Authentic emergence. After the long night of dissolution, when so much of what you once clung to has dissolved into silence, something begins to stir, softly, almost imperceptibly at first. It is not the return of your old identity, nor the rush of a grand epiphany. It feels more like the first light of dawn breaking after a stormy night. The world hasn't changed, but the way you see it has. This is what I call authentic emergence. In this stage, peace is no longer something you chase. It is not a fragile state you try to hold on to. It is simply there, steady and quiet, like a mountain lake reflecting the sky. Life continues to bring its storms. People may still misunderstand you. Challenges still knock at your door, and grief still visits. But at the center of your being, there is a calmness that nothing seems able to disturb. I remember walking through a crowded street during this time in my journey. Cars honking, people rushing, voices colliding with one another. Years earlier, I would have felt swallowed by the noise, my nervous system bracing against the chaos. But now, though I heard the same sounds, they no longer pierced me. I felt as though I were in the eye of the storm, aware of everything, but not undone by it. A quiet center had awakened within me, and from that center, I began to live differently. Authentic emergence is not about acquiring new knowledge, nor about stacking up spiritual achievements. It is about remembering something eternal that has always been here. You begin to see life with different eyes. As if a veil has lifted, the tree outside your window is no longer just wood and leaves. It feels alive, vibrating with presence. A stranger's smile carries a depth you never noticed before. Even ordinary tasks, folding laundry, preparing a meal, feel touched with meaning. Nothing has changed. Yet, everything has changed. Compassion, too, begins to arise in a new way. Earlier on the path, compassion may have been something you practiced, something you reminded yourself to offer. But here, compassion is no longer effortful. It flows naturally, the way water flows downhill. When you see someone suffering, you don't stand above them with pity. You feel with them because you remember how it felt to be lost, to be afraid, to be searching. And from that memory, patience and kindness arise without calculation. This is not about perfection. It's about authenticity. At this stage, you are no longer trying to look spiritual or trying to maintain an image of wisdom. You've let go of the costume, and in letting go, you discover something deeper, the freedom to be exactly as you are. Authentic emergence is not about being flawless. It's about being real. Your laughter is unforced. Your tears are unashamed. Your silence is unpretentious. You are no longer chasing an ideal version of yourself. You are simply living from your essence. One of the most liberating aspects of this stage is how your relationship with thoughts shifts. You used to be entangled in every thought, as if each one carried ultimate truth. A judgment arose, and you believed it. A fear arose, and you obeyed it. But now, You see thoughts more like clouds drifting through the sky. They appear, they pass, and you remain the sky itself. Vast, spacious, unshaken. This doesn't mean the clouds stop coming, but it means they no longer define the weather of your soul. There is also a new intimacy with life itself. You begin to sense that everything is connected. Everything participates in the same fabric of being. The bird's song at dawn, the stranger who meets your eyes for a brief second, even the challenges that once felt cruel, all of it becomes part of a greater harmony. You are learning to trust. You don't need to understand it all. You just know you are inside it, inseparable from it. When you live from this place, people notice, not because you announce it, but because your presence carries a quality they can feel. A friend may sit with you and find themselves breathing easier without knowing why. A child may gravitate toward you, sensing your openness. Even strangers may feel at peace in your company. You are not trying to radiate anything. You simply do, because authenticity has its own fragrance, and it reaches others without effort. Yet even here, there is a subtle danger, the temptation to stop evolving. The peace feels so profound, the clarity so satisfying, that it's easy to rest here and think the journey is complete. But authentic emergence is not the end of the path. It is the beginning of living truthfully. The real work now is integration. Learning to bring this stillness into every corner of your life. Not just on the meditation cushion, not just in moments of calm, but in the chaos of family life, in the demands of work, in the heartbreaks and losses that are part of being human. Integration means you do not withdraw from life, but engage with it more fully. With new eyes and a grounded heart, you pay the bills. You have difficult conversations. You navigate illness or loss, but all from that inner stillness that no longer wavers. This is the dance of authentic emergence, being fully human and fully rooted in awareness at the same time. If you are in this stage now, know that you are not alone. Every mystic, every sage, every soul who has walked this path has passed through the same dawn. They too have tasted the calm that comes after the storm, the clarity that arises when illusions dissolve. And like them, you are being called to live not just for yourself, but as a presence that can nourish others simply by being real. So breathe deeply. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Notice the stillness that has found its home in you. You don't need to hold on to it. You don't need to protect it. It is who you are now. And as you live from that place, life itself becomes your practice, your teaching, your gift. This is the beauty of authentic emergence. You no longer strive to be spiritual. You simply are. And that simple beingness, unpretentious, unguarded, true, is enough to change everything. 6. Divine disruption. Every great journey begins with a crack, a small fracture in the surface of what once seemed solid. For many of us, the spiritual path doesn't begin in a temple, or during a profound meditation, or in some faraway retreat. It begins in the middle of ordinary life, when something deep within whispers, "This isn't enough." You might have a comfortable home, a steady income, even the admiration of others. From the outside, everything looks in place. People might even envy what you've built. Yet inside, there is a quiet unrest, a sense that something essential is missing. That ache is not a flaw. It is not a sign that you are ungrateful. It is the first knock of your soul on the door of your awareness. This is what I call the divine disruption. It doesn't announce itself loudly at first. Often, it begins as restlessness. The work you once enjoyed now feels hollow. The conversations you used to have feel shallow. Even victories that once thrilled you lose their luster. You keep asking yourself, why doesn't this satisfy me anymore? And the harder you try to fill that void with success, pleasure, or distraction, the more it grows. I remember the season when this first arrived in my life. I was doing well. by every standard the world uses to measure success, but I would wake up in the morning and feel as though I were walking through someone else's story. My achievements were polished on the outside, yet inside I felt like an actor on a stage, delivering lines written by a society that never asked who I really was. That dissonance became unbearable. What looked like comfort had become a cage. That is the essence of divine disruption. It shakes you loose from the roles and patterns that no longer fit. At first, it feels unsettling, even frightening, because it dismantles the ground you've been standing on. But this disturbance is not here to harm you. It is here to wake you. On the quantum level, you could say your consciousness has begun to vibrate at a new frequency, one that no longer matches the old patterns of your life. It's like a tuning fork that has been struck, and suddenly, the music of your old reality feels out of tune. The discomfort you feel is simply resonance, pushing you toward harmony with a deeper truth. During this stage, many people try to silence the disruption. They double down on work, chase bigger goals, or drown themselves in distractions. Some consume more food, more entertainment, more busyness, anything to avoid the quiet ache within. But no matter how hard you try to return to the old normal, it doesn't work, because the old normal is gone. Once the soul has knocked, the door cannot be closed again. The invitation of divine disruption is radical honesty. Can you sit with the questions it raises, even when you don't have answers? Can you allow the dissatisfaction to speak instead of covering it up? It might ask you to look at your marriage with new eyes, or your career, or the way you spend your days. It may not demand immediate change, but it does demand awareness. It says, pay attention. Life is calling you deeper. I often describe this stage as standing at the threshold of a house you've lived in your whole life. One day, you notice cracks in the walls, drafts in the windows, a sense that the rooms are too small for who you're becoming. At first, you try to renovate, to rearrange the furniture, to paint over the cracks. But deep down, you know, it's time to step outside, to see what exists beyond the front door. Divine disruption is that moment when you can no longer deny that the house you've built no longer holds your soul. And though it may feel like loss, it is truly a gift, because without disruption, we would stay asleep. We would continue to perform roles that keep us safe but not alive. Disruption is how the soul clears away illusions, making space for a truer life to emerge. I won't pretend this stage is easy. It can be confusing, even painful. It can feel like betrayal, as though life has pulled the rug out from under you just when you thought you had it figured out. But if you can trust the disruption, if you can honor it as an ally instead of an enemy, you will discover that it is not here to destroy you. It is here to reveal you. So if you are in this stage, I encourage you to soften into the questions instead of rushing for answers. Start small. Give yourself moments of stillness, even just a few minutes each day, to listen. Journal the questions that arise without trying to solve them. Notice the coincidences that begin to appear, the book that shows up at the right time, the conversation that feels like it was meant for you. These are not random. They are signals from the deeper intelligence guiding your disruption. Divine disruption is the soul's way of saying, there is more to you than this. It doesn't tell you exactly where to go, but it ensures you cannot stay where you are. And though that may feel uncomfortable, it is the discomfort of growth, the discomfort of a seed cracking open so that life can emerge. If you are standing here, feeling restless, dissatisfied, or even broken, I want you to hear this. You are not broken. You are breaking open. The life you've built is not ending in vain. It is making room for the life you were born to live. So breathe deeply, even in the unease. Trust the knocking at the door of your soul. It is not here to punish you. It is the sound of your true self asking to be remembered. And when you answer, you don't just change your life. You begin the sacred work of becoming who you truly are. 7. Collective resonance frequency. There comes a moment on this path when you realize something humbling: your awakening is not just for you. The peace you cultivate, the clarity you embody, the love that flows through you, none of it stops at the edge of your skin. It ripples outward, like waves moving across a still lake after a single stone has been dropped. At first, awakening feels personal. You're focused on your own healing, your own freedom, your own liberation from the patterns that bound you. And that's how it should be. You cannot offer peace to others if you have never tasted it yourself. But as the journey deepens, you begin to sense that something larger is at work. Each shift inside you is mirrored in the field around you. Each breath of presence is breathed into the shared air of humanity. This is what I call the collective resonance frequency. You see, consciousness is not isolated. We like to think of ourselves as separate individuals, each carrying our own little bubble of awareness. But in truth, we are participants in a vast ocean of mind, a living field that connects us all. Every thought, every emotion, every vibration you carry contributes to that field. When you are restless, you add turbulence to the waters. When you are still, you bring calm that others can feel, even if they don't know why. I have seen this with my own eyes. I once visited a teacher whose presence alone shifted the room. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. Just sitting near him, I felt my own thoughts quiet down, my breathing slow, my heart open. He was not broadcasting anything, not trying to change me, but the resonance of his being touched, something in me that recognized itself. That is the power of embodied awakening. It doesn't end with you. It becomes medicine for the world. And here is the truth: you don't need to be a teacher, a guru, or a public figure to contribute to this resonance. You could be a mother holding her child with tenderness. You could be a nurse offering presence in the middle of a chaotic hospital. You could be a neighbor who greets others with genuine warmth. These small moments, lived from authenticity, ripple into the collective field in ways you may never see, but they matter. It is easy to underestimate this. We think impact only comes from grand actions, writing books, leading movements, speaking to thousands, but the field of consciousness doesn't work that way. A single candle can shift the entire atmosphere of a dark room. A single note sung with purity can change the tone of a whole choir. In the same way, one human being, living in truth, contributes to the tuning of the collective frequency. This realization changes the way you live. You begin to see that your inner state is not just private, it is relational. The anxiety you carry doesn't only weigh on you, it affects your family, your workplace, your community. And the peace you cultivate doesn't only bless you, it blesses everyone who crosses your path. Suddenly, your practice of presence, your commitment to awareness, is no longer just a personal choice. It is a contribution, a gift, a responsibility carried with love. When you reach this stage, awakening stops being a solitary climb up the mountain and becomes a song you sing with others. You understand that humanity is awakening together, even if in staggered steps. The more of us who choose to listen inwardly, to release old patterns, to live authentically, the easier it becomes for others to do the same. Like tuning forks, when one begins to vibrate at a higher frequency, the others nearby are invited to match it. I think of this as joining a chorus. Alone, your voice may feel small, but when joined with others, even if scattered across the world, it creates a harmony that carries far beyond what you can imagine. Each act of forgiveness, each moment of compassion, each breath taken in awareness, these are not isolated acts. They are notes in a collective symphony of awakening. And this is where humility meets empowerment. On one hand, you see that you are just one among billions, a single thread in a vast tapestry. On the other, you realize that without your thread, the tapestry is incomplete. You matter, not because of your achievements or titles, but because of the frequency you choose to embody. So when you wake each day, ask yourself not only, what do I want to achieve, but also, what energy am I contributing to the collective field? Are you adding fear, or are you adding love? Are you amplifying division, or are you radiating unity? These questions are not about guilt, but about awareness. Because every choice, every thought, every action is part of the resonance we share. And here's the beauty: you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to hold peace every moment of every day. Even a few breaths of genuine presence are enough to shift the atmosphere. Even returning to awareness after being lost is a gift. What matters is not that you never stumble, but that you remember again and again to tune yourself to the frequency of love, compassion, and truth. When you live this way, you begin to notice something subtle. People feel safer around you. Strangers soften in your presence. Loved ones relax without knowing why. The collective field recognizes your vibration, and in response, others are invited to awaken to their own. This is the essence of collective resonance. Your awakening becomes an offering, a contribution to the greater good. And it is not about sacrifice or self-denial. It is about seeing that your joy, your peace, your authenticity are not private luxuries, but public blessings. They belong to all of us, because we all share this ocean of consciousness. So, when you feel small, when you doubt your significance, remember this: every ripple matters. The calm you nurture in your own heart is already shaping the waters we all swim in. And when enough of us choose to live this way, humanity itself begins to shift. Awakening is no longer a lonely road. It is a collective homecoming. And perhaps that is the most beautiful realization of all. You are not just awakening for yourself. You are awakening for us. Awakening is not becoming. It is remembering. The 7 doors of awakening are not ladders you climb once and for all. They are more like spirals. Cycles that carry you deeper each time you walk them. You don't graduate from one stage and leave it behind forever. Instead, life will invite you back. Again and again. Each time at a different depth. Each time with a little more awareness. You may feel the unease of divine disruption more than once in your life. Whenever an old identity no longer fits, you may return to sacred seeking with fresh curiosity, exploring new dimensions of wisdom you hadn't considered before. You may face the dark emptiness of necessary dissolution again, when something you trusted collapses, and you may rediscover the sweetness of authentic emergence and the humility of embodied expression many times. As if life keeps reminding you that these gifts are not destinations but living states. What matters is not speed. What matters is not comparison. Awakening is not a race, and no one is ahead or behind. Each stage is its own teacher, carrying its own medicine. If you are restless, that restlessness is teaching you honesty. If you are searching, the search itself is teaching you discernment. If you are dissolving, the collapse is teaching you surrender. If you are present, the presence is teaching you completeness. If you are emerging, the emergence is teaching you authenticity. If you are embodying, embodiment is teaching you integration. And if you are resonating with the collective, that resonance is teaching you connection. Each door matters. Each door is sacred. I think back to my own path, and I see how often I resisted the stages I found uncomfortable. When the disruption came, I tried to silence it. When the searching became confusing, I tried to control it. When dissolution arrived, I begged for it to end. But over time, I discovered that nothing was wasted. Even the most painful chapters carried seeds of grace. Even the darkest nights gave birth to dawn. The spiral brought me around again and again. until I finally began to trust the rhythm of it. So if you find yourself in a stage you don't understand, take heart. You are not lost. You are not failing. You are in the exact classroom your soul needs right now. Let the lesson unfold at its own pace. Don't rush. Don't compare. The oak tree does not measure its worth by how quickly it grows, nor does the river compare itself to other rivers. Life has its own timing, and you are part of that greater rhythm. And here is the deepest truth: the journey was never about becoming someone else. It was never about building a better self or escaping who you are. The journey is about remembering that beneath all the layers of fear, striving, and illusion, you are already whole. You are already enough. You are already a living expression of the vast intelligence we call the universe. Awakening is not the adding of something new. It is the gentle peeling back of everything false, until only what is true remains. When you live from that place, something extraordinary happens. You no longer need to force change upon the world. You no longer need to preach or persuade. Simply by being yourself, by living with presence, with authenticity, with compassion, you begin to shift the field around you. Your peace becomes a gift to your family. Your clarity becomes a mirror for your community. Your authenticity becomes a permission slip for others to be themselves. This is why your awakening matters. Not just for you, but for all of us. Every time one of us remembers who we truly are, the whole human field remembers a little more. Every time one of us chooses presence over distraction, compassion over judgment, truth over illusion, we strengthen that frequency in the collective. Your life is not an isolated thread. It is woven into the great tapestry of humanity, and the color you bring influences the whole design. So, as you walk through these 7 doors, as you spiral deeper into this rupture, seeking dissolution, presence, emergence, embodiment, and resonance, hold this truth close. You are never walking alone. Countless souls have walked before you. Countless souls are walking beside you, and countless more will walk after you, carried by the resonance you leave behind. If you remember nothing else, remember this: you are not here to become someone else. You are here to remember that you already are. You are the consciousness that sees, the love that breathes, the awareness that holds it all. And when you live from that place, you not only transform your own life, you become a quiet revolution in the life of the world. So, let the spiral turn. Let each stage be your teacher. Let each moment be your guide. Trust that where you are is exactly where you need to be. Because awakening is not about reaching a final destination. It is about discovering, again and again, that the destination was within you all along. And when you live from that truth, when you live as a living expression of the universe itself, you don't just change yourself. You change everything.